Hey, everybody. We should be coming across to your Facebook anytime now. Anytime. So we have an interesting...
Well, not anytime. This time. Right
this
now.
This time, right now. It should be starting, yes.
Yeah.
And we are going to have an interesting conversation because we were asked to actually talk about this topic. So we kind of want to wait.
Several occasions, so we kind of put it all together.
Several occasions, yes, truth.
A variety of different places and stations of life and
right.
The whole 9 yards. And we realized, hey, this isn't just something for young
right.
or old or
right.
anything else. It's all across the spectrum. We started to realize that information's information, and some of it could be shared that might actually make for
it might help
a little
people.
better relationships.
Yes, that might keep y'all from going through some of the bumps and bruises that even he and I went through on some of this stuff, because if we had known some of this stuff a few years ago, it would have been a lot easier to get through. And since we've been, well, first we got to introduce ourselves and then our topic.
Right.
Sorry.
So far, we're just... we got something you want to hear, and... Well, welcome to another What Really Matters.
Yay!
And this is Michelle, my beautiful wife.
And this is my hot toddy.
Mm-hmm.
That's Mr. Todd.
You bet.
Todd.
And tonight we got an interesting topic. Like we said, there's a variety of people who've asked for it. It's a little sensitive topic, but it's necessary. I mean, it's very embedded in all of our lives.
It really shouldn't be taboo for the church, but it is. And so we're going to break that taboo.
That's kind of one of the things that touched on with us, was everybody was like, I don't know where I can get good information from, or
because I was taught this when I was younger growing up, then I have misconceptions, and we're taught that because we were raised in the church, and there's nothing wrong with what we were taught. We just need to be taught more than what we were taught.
It sounds like you're probably going to talk about sex.
We are,
wow.
But we promise to try to keep it as
grade A, good,
as
pure
PG as we can, because we're not really talking about detailed stuff, but we are talking about some things that there has been questions that have been asked to us. We've talked to several young married couples, and technically one kind of a newly married couple, but they're almost our age.
Yeah.
And everybody has the same kind of questions, and they're all the same confusion, and so it's kind of like, let's
common thread.
See what happens. So the first thing we want to do,
first thing out of the box, we want to make sure you know that everything we're going to say here, we have some research that we can publish on the web after we get done, so you can find some of this information. It's kind of one of the people we've talked to.
So dark.
One of the people we talked to said they don't want to go on because it's obviously you can't type in. What are you going to type in Google? I mean. So,
if you Google this stuff, people, you're going to get all kinds of stuff, because you know our internet and our society and our craziness.
So there are some careful places.
Be careful if you do.
Right, and we'll cite some as we go through this process, but I kind of like the one site that really covers it really well. Focus on the Family is a Christian site that deals with this really well. That one I highly recommend.
There's some scientific studies that we looked at as well.
Ones. And we'll explain what some of those are.
And I'm going to tell you, first we're going to address what the Bible says about sex.
That was my main point.
And
that's where that's the direction we're talking.
That's the first part. And then I'm going to let you know that technically, if you're a young married person that I personally know and am friends with, I'm going to make sure you know some of this stuff, because I think it's important. And it's so important that, we take care of young married people by sending special books and different things to help them, because they don't know, because they're taught not to at this stage. So let's talk.
You're that church shower lady that runs around giving everybody
sex gifts,
information. Well, information.
Just playing, just giving them some information. Okay, so what does the Bible say about it?
Let's
get into this, because we don't want to be on here forever.
Right,
it's
the Bible,
it's a long one.
It's very clear about it. Obviously, it's talking about the purpose of sex, and that it is good. It is a good thing, and it is purposeful, and it has its place in your relationship. We're talking about a biblical relationship, married, couples,
married couples.
This is, not weird stuff. This
Proverbs.
is biblical stuff. So we're going to go straight to Proverbs. In the book of Proverbs, the wise father instructs his son to rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. And that's Proverbs 5 through 18. And
right.
5:18 through 19, sorry.
The wife of your youth. That means you stay married to her.
That's a one-time deal.
Yeah, it is a one-time deal.
Now, it makes a difference because when you approach somebody in this kind of relationship and you get to that portion of the relationship,
right,
there's things you got to learn and you're going to live with it. The results are,
well, you work
we're trying to get
out.
better results.
Well,
and we'll talk about some of those things that have come up.
The next thing that
getting in the way.
The husbands and wives owe it to each other. That's actually in the Bible, believe it or not. The Bible states that you owe it to each other. And what it says is the husband should give to his wife. Now, our society talks about men always wanting it. This is the Bible talking about a woman wanting it. I'm just saying. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. That's in 1 Corinthians 7, 3 and 4. And what that's talking about is you are supposed to not withhold it from each other, especially in anger. Ladies, y'all, listen to me. Don't do that. Men, too, if you do. Yeah. It's not a weapon. It's not a tool to be used. Now, there are times you don't feel well, stressed out, whatever. But make sure you're still praying and doing some of the intimate things. But it tells you not to stay apart for long. It's intended for you to get together often. In fact, I think that's the next paragraph.
It says when you separate, you should be praying.
It does. That's this next one. I've already started reading it. It says, do not deprive one another except perhaps by an agreement for an unlimited amount of time, but that you can devote yourself in prayer. But then come back together again so Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So the Bible is telling us that we need to be together. So, but there's no right or wrong amount of times, and that's one of the questions that was covered. Well, that we were asked.
Going back to the first page, I want to make sure I get this in as before we go in too much further.
Because the next is the myth sex busting.
We also have another statement in here which I think is important. It says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled." And that's what we're talking about here.
Right. It's the marriage bed. It's not hopping around from person to person.
No weird stuff and
you're not bringing in extra people, and you're not having pornography brought in.
This is defiling.
That's all defiling.
That's why I want to make sure we got
marital. Yeah.
That we got in there.
Yeah.
Pornography, no.
Right. Yeah. All of that will defile.
Because each and every single one of those things that we just kind of alluded to and talked about, defiling it.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Well, you went to the back of the room there for a minute. It has to do with taking. Not only does it defile it in the sense that it undermines its purpose and goes against God's will.
Right.
But it brings conditions which are unhealthy to you physically and spiritually.
Because I know that we try to keep these in 30 minutes, which we've never done. Let's get on with the myths and facts of sex that we have chosen to cover tonight.
Okay, I'll read the myth and you can jump in. How's that?
Okay.
I'll read it.
You can read the myth and then I'll talk about it because I got some stuff to say.
That's what we've done. Myth: men are always ready and willing to have sex. Just
like that.
All the time. Ready, waiting, baited.
That's what society teaches us. If you watch movies and TV, men are constantly on the prowl. When we were teenage girls, especially in the church, you're taught, every guy you're dating, if that's what they're after. I understand what teenage boys want. I mean, I get it. But at the same time, it's not... it's so hardwired, and this is what one of the young ladies mentioned was, it's so hardwired into girls that men constantly want it, that there's never a time that they don't, that when they really don't, and you're married, talking from a married point of view here.
That's primarily what we're
talking. It kind of makes you feel like you're not attractive and your husband doesn't find you sexy. But there's a reason that men may not always want sex, and it's not the same for every man. And every woman that when you get married and your husband says no and you're wanting it, and let me tell you something, this is not just one or two young married couples. There's been a lot of married couples that's come to us that the women are all going, I don't understand. He never wants sex. And I'm like, what?
What'd you do with my phone? Is it over there? There's something related to this that I wanted to...
So what we're talking about is men and women are both gonna, you're gonna want it at different times. You need to make sure you kind of maintain a set time. I mean, y'all may want it. There's no specifics. Once or twice a week, once or twice a month, once or twice a year, once every whatever. It's really what you and your spouse decide that you want. But men, if you're not into it, that's okay. You have every right to say you're not into it. But love on your wife and tell her how beautiful she is and how adorable she is and how sexy she is, because it really does kind of cut into us believing that we're not attractive because we're not turning you on. Right. You know what I mean?
Every time we mention a myth, it's because these myths perpetrate falsehoods in the minds of the men or the women, and it puts barriers in your relationship, and that's what we're always talking about in each and every one of these things is relationship.
Well, there's emotional strife because the woman starts feeling insecure, and then the husband's like, oh my gosh, she's crazy, because right?
Not again. I just wanted to watch MASH and go to bed.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's kind of one of them. And so it is stereotypical that the men always want it. So women are it's really hard on us when we're turned down.
Well, here's a good example. Focus on the Family has a little thing in here about this as well. And it says, how can a couple resolve arguments over how often to have sex? And this is that's just that comment. It says, this person writes in, I'm frustrated because my wife would probably be content to make love once a month. And he says, which doesn't come close to satisfying me. Is it abnormal, or am I some kind of pervert? Is there a way to resolve this conflict?
Right.
Work it out.
Well, the big thing is you are going to have some couples that are different, sex drives, if you will. And you just have to talk about it and come, as with anything else, you're going to have to compromise. Mm-hmm. Compromising, that's really the big thing. So you ready for the next myth?
Well, the other thing is a lot of these myths, you're trying to gather information. You're not wanting to delve into the dark web over there with all this stuff. So you're drawing your information. There's a certain level you can talk about some of this with your friends or whatever. But you're not going to talk about intimate things with your life. So you're kind of like, that's why these questions are coming up. So you're dealing with preconceptions in your mind that you probably should lay aside. In almost every one of these circumstances that we're talking about, it has whatever you think the normal is. When you work it out with the other person, you're going to find out there are some normal ranges, but ranges, when you have them, have extremely highs and extremely lows, and what's normal is what's right for the two of you.
Right. But society, TVs, movies, songs, everything teaches us that men are constantly the horn dog.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're taught. So, okay, what's the next? Oh, I'm going to do the next one, and you're going to talk about it.
No, I'm not.
I'll talk about it. I don't care.
All right, next myth. Size matters.
Believe it or not, this was asked to us recently by more than one couple.
Sure, I mean, we got
and apparently, the males in those relationships feel like they may not have an adequate male part or whatever. And I'm just going to tell you, guys, if you're watching, and girls too, it doesn't matter what size you are, because when you're making love to your wife, the emotions and everything else that's going on will fulfill her. You don't need, it's not about a size. And the reality is, if you go to the science side of it, and the reason why men have a hard time with it, especially in high school when you're going after Jim and having to take showers, and nobody's.
Well,
everybody's
gone, huh?
right. Well, I don't know. Back in the day, I don't know what it is now.
They don't even dress out now.
But when they did the showering and stuff, and
Yeah.
it left some boys feeling very inadequate because they may not have developed and others had already, and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, once you're into adulthood and once you have things change. This is all I'm going to say. If you want more details, I'll talk to you later because I don't want to get into. I don't want to. This is not meant to be something vulgar.
No.
This is just saying size doesn't matter.
The point of the matter is that there's a lot of discussion about feeling inadequate, especially from the male
Right.
side,
And you
towards their
shouldn't.
wives. You're not a you're not a trophy. It's not about that. And when you've established the relationship that we're talking about, a Christ-like relationship in the
Right.
marriage, where
It's-
you have dedicated yourselves to each other 100%. I'm yours, you're mine. We come together. That's how the compromise
Here's
works.
a phrase that I can say that's not really gross, but it's funny, and it used to be told to me all the time by, I don't know, a friend of mine probably 30 years ago.
There we go.
And she says it's not the size of the boat, it's how you row it. So, man, listen.
Right.
Okie doke. So, what's the next one? We've done 2 myths. There are several myths that we looked up and several that we've been asked.
Yep.
So here we go. You're going to answer this next one.
Okay.
Yeah, you are, because this one is a big one, I think, for women. Because, again, it's portrayed this way. Sex is over when the man has the big O for him, and then everything stops. And that's a myth.
Well, selfish sex, that's when it can be. But there's also a lot of physical limitations and issues and stimulation issues all related to all that,
Okay,
which
but-
creates a situation where that certainly could be the case. However, it certainly doesn't have to be the case. And if it is the case, that's not, depending on what the situation is in the relationship that's caused that, and you discuss the situation, it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong. In fact, it's way more normal than you would think. But the fact that it's over doesn't mean it's over. This need not and should not be the case. Sexual activity involves 2 people, and the sexual activity should continue until both partners are satisfied. Your
Right.
goal is
Guys,
always
keep
that.
doing things.
Just
say
keep
it.
trying.
Yes.
Sometimes, take a break, get back to it. It's about having the courtship relationship that we're talking about. Good sex involves ongoing communication and connection between the partners to make sure that they're doing what's mutually acceptable and pleasurable to each other.
Right. Married couples.
Right.
This is all doing, what God's taught us to do. Okay.
Well, the
so let's
other
move
part
on.
is the other side of this thing is there's no reason why every encounter that you have, in terms of it being a level of sexual encounter, has to end with an orgasm.
Truth.
Okay.
Truth. Okay. Myth.
Myth. All right.
Just say the big O.
Yeah, all big O's are explosive, mind-blowing, and earth-shattering.
Okay, so I've had a few of the girls talk to me about that because, when Harry Met Sally
I
has
knew
that
you were
big
gonna pull that
scene
one.
where she's at the pie shop faking something. You know what I'm talking about? Y'all seen When Harry Met Sally, right? And
Maybe not.
maybe not.
Different
Y'all.
generation.
Well, true. Anyhow. So I have actually had a few girls that are kind of shocked because it's like, it goes either way. It's either you're taught that you're never supposed to have one, or you're taught that you're always supposed to have a big explosive, oh my God stuff. You know what I mean? And it's just not true. The reality is every time you come together with your spouse, it's going to be different. And sometimes it is going to be earth-shattering and amazing and all of this. And sometimes it's going to be ho-hum. And that is life, and that is okay. It's not meaning that there's something wrong with you or your relationship or your spouse or how much they find you attractive or anything like that, which is usually what... And it's not even about, because one of the questions was, well, maybe he's just not taking enough time. Well, no, not necessarily. Sometimes it's just that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. So, you ready for the next one?
This one?
Yeah, because you have to talk about that, because you said I have to talk about this one.
All right.
So I'm reading the myth on this one. Myth time. It's a long one.
It's a long question, a short answer.
It is. Okay, so the myth goes, girls can't get pregnant the first time they have sex. A girl can't get pregnant if she is having sex during her period. A girl knows when during the month she can't get pregnant. A girl cannot get pregnant if she takes care of herself by cleaning up after sex.
Very explicit show you got here.
It is very explicit. I told y'all. It's gonna be. It's sex.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, the fact of the matter is...
It's not really explicit. We're not getting into details.
Women can get pregnant when?
Every time.
Yes.
And the big thing
with few
is...
exceptions of medical conditions. But no, you should always have the understanding.
You have a hysterectomy.
Right.
Probably not getting pregnant.
That would be
if you have your tubes tied...
Mm-hmm.
There is still a chance you could.
That's true.
And if he's had a vasectomy, there's still a chance
That's
that you
true.
can. And being on birth control, you
definitely
still can.
Let's tell you a secret.
We have a young man who is 28 years old named Quentin Wyatt. That is our proof, because I was on birth control and we got pregnant. Because I was taking antibiotics, and my doctor never said that it would cause any issues. So,
with your birth
young
control.
Ladies, check with your doctors about all medications you're taking, even herbal supplements and whatever, to make sure.
Otherwise,
but it doesn't matter what system you're using to keep from getting pregnant. Except for abstinence, there's always a risk, and it doesn't matter. So that's just a myth blown out of the water. It doesn't matter what you think, there's always a risk. Always. Doesn't mean that, it should keep you from having fun with your spouse, though. Okay. Last one.
All right.
And this was another one that came to me from a friend of mine that is essentially my age. So... it was kind of a myth busting that we needed to talk about.
All right. It's just another one. The myth. A man gets a reaction just because his wife touches him.
Well, okay. Right. And that's the myth, because the reality is, I used to be told, especially when guys are young, that it doesn't take much for them to respond to anything.
Just a whisper of wind?
Just a whisper of wind. And the reality is that's not necessarily true. So women, it's okay to touch or to caress, and if they don't respond and there's not a response, it's okay. Quentin Truth, that must be to the other one. And so that...
it's all about the technical timing.
Well, right. But it's okay to touch and caress. And it doesn't matter if there's not a response, because sometimes it's just relaxing. And sometimes he's had a stressful day. And by you touching him, it gives him relaxation. He feels he's actually in his comfort zone and he can relax and go to sleep. It doesn't involve sex, you know what I mean? And it really bothered a friend of mine, because if she touched her husband and he didn't respond, she was like, well, he doesn't.
It's a rejection.
It's a rejection.
Or there's something wrong with me. Or even worse. It's like, not only did he reject me, but I must be...
Right, I must be unattractive, not sexy, all the things that women think because the husband's not responding.
Right.
And so the reality is, ladies, it's okay. It's just fun during the day to touch them off and on, to say, hey. Right?
No comment.
Yes. It's fun. No, y'all need to hang out and, spend time together and make sure each other
and keep it in the house.
Feels loved
away from the public area.
And just enjoy each other. These are just a few myths that we.
I mean, there's several more, but I think we get the idea, and we could do
This
more
was
if
a
people
little bit-
want other more specific ones. But the point of each one of the myths that we brought up was not just to talk about these topics or to be provocative is a good word to put it. It's because each one of these things laid out a barrier in the relationship of insecurity,
Right.
fear,
Yes.
rejection,
Right. Mostly to the women.
doubt, anger,
and the size matters
frustration.
part was actually for the men, but
and that's part of the fear and frustration
and then that
disillusionment
causes,
is what it
causes
creates.
issues in the marriage.
And
because,
all these things are barriers to the
Right.
to the free flow of love that God's wanting to have in a married relationship.
Right. Well,
And
because
that's
this is
the way
something
it's
that
supposed
really
to be.
affects every marriage that I think that most people don't realize that. I mean, because there's been times that some of these myths happened even with us, especially when we were first married, that made me, questioned if you loved me and if you found me attractive, and then I went all bonkers because you must not love me or find me attractive.
Yeah, we're trying to save you that
And that's what we're trying to
terrible
keep you from
3 to 6
having
month thing to
and then
figure it all out.
The funny thing is, so when we're
3
talking
weeks
to
to 6
these
months.
young married couples and a newlywed that's my age, finding out that it's really a common theme for others, we thought, hey, we ought to do this topic because it's really kind of important. And it really does affect us. So what we're going to do is, it's really, I think we're pretty much done. We did it in 30 minutes, so that's awesome.
Well, one thing I wanted to add to is a real quick summary, focus on the family, kind of put it together, kind of summarize all the things that we have here.
Okay.
And in terms of encapsulating what we're talking about. Every couple is different. We don't want to make
Right.
we want to make sure that you recognize that if you look up in somewhere's online or in a book or you had some science,
Please be careful looking online.
or even when you're utilizing things like the height report, which many years ago I had sought that out as a resource that was like, wow, this has got all the information. Be
Right.
careful when you're looking at that kind of information, because what they don't tell you, Washington Post did a really good outline on this, which I had to agree with. Yes, you can look up some information, and then that was an old report, and they in the 1970s, but they updated it all the way up to the year 2000. They did a new update on it that answers some of the questions that we're talking about in a scientific manner. Now, some of the issues in that particular report, we would certainly disagree with as Christians in terms of the basis of which they're trying to show in the report. But so be careful when you're looking in those things, and even if you find a number, that number doesn't have to be relevant to you and your partner at all.
Right.
Because it's about your relationship, your bodies, and
It's what happens
your
with-
marriage. So those are the things we want to make sure.
And guys,
when
if
you
you-
feel like you're not measuring up or you're not not doing the way you should be, communicate is always how you resolve it. And then if there's ever any really larger issue than that, then definitely would need to have you seek professional counseling if there's issues that become destructive.
The biggest
in the
thing is
relationship.
to remember that you love each other,
Yes.
and you want to spend time together, and so you need to make sure you spend time together. And sometimes that is making an appointment, every Sunday night at 8:00, no matter what. That's when you're together.
And that's a good point that was actually made
I mean,
in one of the articles that we have, which was sometimes you miss each other all the time because you come and go. We don't. We're always together. But other people, normal people, have relationships where they're doing different things. And you start to feel rejected because it's not happening.
Right. Well,
so they said, communicate. Find a time when you actually come together to deal with that situation.
Today, while I was writing several of our What Really Matters, we have a couple of topics that's going to be coming up over the next 2, and that's what a woman needs from her husband and what a husband needs from his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in addition to sex, which is tonight's topic, but it will talk about what you need to do in addition to making sure this part gets worked out. Because let me tell you something, the sex part is really important in marriage, and I think people don't realize how big a deal that it really can be. Some people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. Yes, it is. You need to talk about it. You need to communicate. You need to discuss what you like, what you don't like. You need to talk about how often. And if you're the one that's not wanting it as often as the other, then you need to buck it up a little. If you're one wanting it every day, then you might want to bring it down a little.
And that brings me to my next point that's on here, because it says there's a time to serve, reminding you that the sexual portion of the relationship belongs to the other person.
That's what I read in 1 Corinthians.
So when you come into this into the particular part of your relationship, you're there to serve the other, and vice versa.
Right.
That way it doesn't become a selfish thing. And the other thing that you were just talking about in the relationship, that if it's not important in the relationship, or you don't make it important, or you tell somebody it's not important, then actually what you're doing is you're allowing, especially in the male psyche, in the male makeup, there's the physical nature to it. And it sounds stupid, but there's an extent to where it's overspoken by a bunch of cruddy guys. But if that doesn't happen in a relationship, then thoughts go outside of the relationship,
right.
And that's the danger. You start to have lustful thoughts instead of more beautiful thoughts about being with your wife. They become lustful and outward, and that's the reason why it becomes an important part, because as God had stated in one of the scriptures, it actually says, it's good for a man to be alone, but he can't, so because if he's going to do these things, so that's why a man and a woman are meant to be together, is to establish that relationship.
In Corinthians, when it's talking about where it says come together so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. And that's one of the scriptures that we were reading earlier.
And then that brings us to the intentional part that you just mentioned. Don't get upset with me. We're almost done.
I am not upset with you.
The intentional part is making sure that it becomes...
I had it done in 30 minutes.
Not a habit. It becomes intentional.
Yes.
That it is... You want... And the funny part is, as you build the relationship, if frequency is a problem, it will increase because the relationship has grown.
Okay, I'm going to say one more thing.
Oh.
I know. Okay, so one more thing, and that is, one of the things that I've heard a lot that men say to their wives, and that is, well, if you would just, and in fact, I saw it on a talk show with an actor one time, amongst all the other men and women that we've talked to about it, and that was, well, if you would come to bed not wearing your t-shirt and pajama pants, and you'd come to bed in lingerie and stuff, then we would know and we would be okay. And it's kind of like...
A little lazy, huh?
Well, but that puts all the pressure...
Not her, him.
Right. Puts all the pressure on the female.
Right.
So she's always got to come to bed with her hair and makeup done.
Right.
Always got to come to bed in lingerie, hoping and praying to God that her husband's going to be in the mood that night. And the reality is, that's not fair to the woman. So men... If
it's unspoken. But if you've talked about it, and you know that if she's... Where's the purple hanky to bed?
This is one of the things that has been discussed with some of the young ladies.
Right.
Men are all saying, well, you don't come to bed where I know that you want it. Well,
right.
I shouldn't have to. But also, men should instigate on occasion.
Right.
It shouldn't always be the woman.
Right.
I'm just, that's my input. That's my end. Mm-hmm. So we need to pray.
I just thought of another place we could have pulled some great information from, but I won't bring it in now because it's too late.
So if y'all have questions
it's actually on the radio.
Or comments, you can put them in here, or you can message us, because I know it's a private conversation that you might want to have, and that's fine. So send us a private conversation. And women, if you want to privately message me, go to my Facebook and message me. Men, if you want to privately message him, go to his Facebook and message him. You don't have to go even through our What Really Matters page, so that you're not talking to the opposite sex, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. So we're going to pray for you. My voice is headed out of here. So do you want to pray?
Is that your sign that you're not going to have enough voice left?
I can pray, but it's leaving me.
All right, Father, I thank you and I praise you. I thank you for the married relationship. I thank you for the physicality in that relationship, because of what it brings into the relationship in all of its way. It's beautiful in the way that you've presented it, and that you just show us that it should be. And as we work inside your will and in the way of the relationship, that these things grow us in our relationship with ourselves and with you, and in the way that you have all of us operate well within inside your will. Father, we just thank you for a little bit of fun. And
fun.
a whole lot of joy, because
we thank
joy
you
is
for creating it, because it is fun for the marriage relationship, and we appreciate it.
It's a spoil that you should definitely grab onto and lavish as a major part of your relationship. Father, I just ask that you just touch everyone out there in their relationships, make this particular area of their lives blossom, grow, expand, become significant and intentional, and we just really just thank you for
blessing everyone watching.
Absolutely. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so we are going to head out of here now. And next week's, Thursday night, we're going to do something I don't remember now. Sunday. Sunday is going to be a chop up the chicken blindfolded. Next week's topic is going to be...
Everybody can do that.
What? I don't think so. I wouldn't try.
Without cutting your thumb off?
Well, I would cut myself. So next week's is going to be what wives want from their husband. There's 9 things that they want. Okay. And then I have a few...
It's not a continuation of the sexual thing. These are just 9 things across the board.
Sex is one of them.
Well, maybe.
But it is one of them.
Yeah.
Women want sex too.
Whoa.
So,
all right.
Y'all have a good night.
With that thought, we'll leave you.
We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.